The second thing that I believe we need to develop in order to harness the opportunities of the future, and that is generational thinking. Everybody say with me, generational thinking. If we are going to make a difference in the future, we have to be generational thinkers. I like an analogy that my good friend Bishop Tudor Bismarck used in describing the African situation and why we don't seem to be making progress. He says it's like running a relay race. There are 4 people to complete the race. The first person starts with a baton and starts the first leg of the race. If that team that the person is part of must complete the course, the baton must be passed on successfully from one generation to the other, to the other, to the other. But in our parts of the world, it seems as if we don't pass on the baton. So one generation starts with the baton. It starts running and running and running and running very hard. But somewhere in the middle, it drops the baton and keeps running without the baton, because the baton is what authorizes the next person to run. So you get to the next person, you have run, but you didn't pass on the baton. So the next person starts his race. But in order to run his race, he has to go back and pick the baton that was dropped and then start halfway of the previous generation's race in order to run his race. By the time he gets to start his race, the people he was on the line with have gone way ahead of him. He also runs somewhere and drops the baton. So the next generation has to come back and probably come and pick the baton from the first generation, run the first generation's race, run the second generation's race before he runs his own race. By the time he starts to run his race, he's an old man. The 4th person starts, he has no baton. So he comes back. He runs the first generation's race, second generation's race, third generation's race. By the time he starts to run his own race, everybody who started with him has completed. The stadium is empty, but he's still running. That is our tragedy as Africa. That is why a person grows to be about 40 years before he buys his first car. A person lives to be about 65 years before he builds his first house. Sometimes 70 years before he lives in his own house. By the time he's ready to live in his own house, life has battered him so much he moves into his own house and dies. Why? Because he has been running a race that was not for him. He didn't start with strength. Those who were supposed to hand over the baton to him drop the baton. So he has to run the past generation's race in order to win. If we are going to move, we have to make sure we become generational thinkers.
Station in the capital.
Generational thinkers are people who run not for themselves alone, but run so that the next generation can run better. In our country, we had a generational thinker, a young man who left the shores of Ghana in the latter part of the 1800s. His name was Tete Kwashi. He traveled to a small place called Fernando Po in Equatorial Guinea now. He worked as a plantation farmer, almost a slave. He was not a middle-level worker. He was not a high-level worker. He was just a worker. But when he left Fernando Po, he brought with him a few cocoa pods. Incidentally, he came from Teshi. But he went to the mountains, the Abri Mountains, went to Kropong, eventually settled in Mampong, planted his first seeds from the cocoa that he brought. He didn't have much success very early. By 1879, he planted the first seeds in Mampong. By 1891, that is between 1879 and 1891, that's about 12 years, Ghana exported its first cocoa. 12 years after the first man planted the first seed, we exported the first cocoa. Can you imagine how many bags we exported? 2 bags. But by 1910, from 1879 to 1910, that is just about 31 years, is that right? 31 years. Ghana had become the leading producer of cocoa. Between 1910 and 1980, Ghana was the world's largest exporter of cocoa. The cocoa industry became the foundation of our economy. Currently, more than 40% of all our export earnings come from cocoa. It occupies about 10% of our gross national product. Why am I giving you all these statistics? Because one man carried the economy of a country on his shoulders. A generational thinker is one who is able to sow seeds for the future. A generational thinker is not somebody who is only committed to what he wants to enjoy today, but somebody who says, if I run with this race, I must make sure the next generation does not run my race. The next generation must run its own race. I must empower the next generation. A generational thinker thinks beyond his personal needs. They sow seeds for the future. A generational thinker must plan at least for 4 generations ahead of him. If you read the Bible, every blessing of God, he says, is to the 3rd and 4th generation. When God blesses you, it has generational consequences. In the same way, if he curses you. If we are going to take charge of the future, we have to be generational thinkers. That means that for everything you do, you have to think of the person who is coming after you. And make sure the person coming after you will not be worse off, but will be better than you are. In very, very little things that we do. And I feel that for us, one of the significant ways as a church that we can be generational thinkers is to educate the future. That is why beginning from this year, we are starting a new project. The Central Educational Trust. The first half of the project, we're going to plant first class, world class, senior secondary schools in every region of Ghana. We're going to take it to every district of Ghana. And if God help us, we'll take it to every community of Ghana. We don't want the children of Ghana to go to school and learn ignorance.
a wan kwanya here pe aseda ane di ma urade se na yetimi asori aba betena se ene ye fiada aye ahini me bosumi ne yewomi ne de to so aduonu san aduonu enwotwe ne nyina ne se Neat 100.9 FM. And it's a Yatanasi. Yatanasi, I'm going to say the idea city here. And you're back crying. And what you know, now interview back also at me about the tattoo. And send a penny for one also about now also about the dear home come on. Nadia, you're from me. ADAKABRI and Mamudu. Oshioma. Na panyilu kwa jwa miado ene di mesia bontre manchari osai ajimai obutu dwaben awaya hobua atimi ahwe ne papa ADAKABRI Mamudu Osioma ama mababa ye nana osai ajimai na yi ne atimi anum sikasa no ewa asante dwaben enu akire no godame obanyilu godame ono so etato otato eye na ku afiri ye enso na service mrante kwai na ogina mu na wohwe akire di ama mrante kwa no emienu technical production no abna Frema Abankro Mara Michi Mapa on Asafo on Facebook Live Ukose Sia Bibi Adam Neat 100.9 FM Achu Agbo and engineering worker Batiako and Najari Nanabu Aje Nabe Sono Yamfa Diabenia a year Ada Sankroma was a Sempro na pay the aseda eswama aye solo aye big solo facilities group almost so no aye dada yaw and aye mapuna na pay so no aye ubrana na aye DJ Bosco Mills ni asademra ne say tete Wotiano, Aya Keno Foriata, Nana Yakuntunkruko Foriata, Finance Minister, Cynthia Onkono, and Ne Yaditamahabo perspective no at the Ebremo. I didn't know a second of Foriata Nasia, and Netamahabo, one more crano Madipawana, Obsigana Mampani, Yadi Yankran ADAKABRI Mamudu Osioma, Tawan Famro, na 78 yawape, Cynthia was a second of Foriata Wakro, and saying, and Ne. Tamahabo wa winim sika Ghana mampanyini yati ade efata mahabo adeba wani awamo atimi akrakra noma Ghana mampanyini nanka enei na obi akra noma de pata mahabo sa container baako eye frozen foods no nanka otua eye 140,000 nanka otua 140,000 na 140,000 no Ghana mampanyini enne na no duade ya ene fiada aduade ya ako 200,000 nesika ya gidi frita mahabo no Ghana mampanyina sema da wane se ene tamahabo tani pani nyina emu acha miensa wahamu nchichemu aduosia wamu die for over the 5-year period Ghana mampanyina kwakwahwe wamu ngumam wamu de debia wamu no man auction debia wamu no man auction na auction no so a na ababe yede ebenia na enoma no yede auction no ma se twa wamu ho ama enipa nine ene control tamahabo enipa mienu ewa Jubilee House omo na control auction no ewa tamahabo eye den enipa ekra no mapa tamahabo emu 60% emu 60% wamu de debia over the 5-year period omo no ma auction over the 5-year period omo no ma auction auction na sa nipa nan ye watamahabo include excluding sa nipa 2 no ewa Jubilee House no wamu na benefiting from auction aye no Ghana mampanyini almost say makano operata nko na new finance minister no baba no yamra me point out say way ne no ma da bia ya de auction ɛyɛ 40% na aka no so no emu mienu emu 20% emu 20% wɔn so no wɔn ɛyɛ group a yɛ from the misdescription group some misdescription group no sɛ wɔde asi kyerɛ na ba ya wɔde asi kyerɛ nkura no sɛ yɛ grade 1 a wɔsi ɛyɛ grade 2 sɛ yɛ grade 2 a wɔsi ɛyɛ grade 6 ne nyinaa kyerɛ sɛ ɛma duty ne ba fam ɔde free North America na ba ya wɔsi da bibi de free Togo na ba yɛ ne nyinaa ma duty ne ba fam nti ontua the right duty no ɛmfa ma ɔman no ɛne ti akɔ wie sɛ ɛyɛ 20% pɛ 20% pɛ wɔn na tua duty papapa wɔtɛma habɔ wɔn na tua duty papapa wɔtɛma habɔ Ghana mampanyini wɔn sɛ makanofori atanko na wɔn bɛba bɛgyina wɔn ma new minister wɔde ne bɛba no wɔn bɛkyerɛkyerɛ de nneɛma no nyinaa akyerɛkyerɛ de nneɛma no nyinaa na Ghana mampanyini ɛnyɛ ade papa sɛ biribi sei ɛna ɛkɔ so wɔtɛma habɔ sɛ 60% of enipa ɛba no yɛwɔ list bi a sɛ 60% no da bia wɔn nneɛma kɔ auction ɛnu akyerɛ no ɛna 20% no so a ɛka no so no wɔn so misdescription and then the last 20% no wɔn na ahwɛ Ghana wɔn na etua duty papapa yei tenoperator tuzu wunim ana wunim sɛ na ano because we a group of persons and normally up to 60% of Sanipano, the beer for 5-year period, Womanoma call a auction, the beer Womanoma a auction, the beer Womanoma auction, a day. Now, him for the benefit from that auction, and Shazagana for Sankro for Omako Frodo, a American system, no, I call Frodo American system, no, hey, I'm an FBI, ever Ghana, Ahmed, Adanayasa, Samotimi Atnasia, Ako Bu America for na ene FBI for Bagana Baba Ghana Mampani, morning Quatamahabo, the 60%, the Biano, woman and woman auction, Yantiasia.
Utie oha FRIMPONG no. Needs FM.
What's cool, fresh and trendy with a new look? Makes you feel real good, that refreshing vibe. Satisfies you right just the way you like. Do you know? Do you know? Do you know? Ain't gotta do it alone. Specialized makes you glow. Anytime, anywhere. Specialized feel different. Always think special ice, natural mineral water. Feel different. Think special. This
Needs 100.9 FM Suni. Now, and Friday, October 28, 2022. Now, Yatnasia, my Mrs. Abri say just about 4 minutes to 2 p.m. Now, Yanko, the United States of America. Now, Yani Arthur Kobina Kennedy, MD, and Concoction and Common Ekaka. Dr. Kennedy, Yamwa.
Mejondo ADAKABRI wete funin sumitia.
Doc, yes, so Yajo Papa. Now, yen come upon the spectacle of a year Temahabo, a year number one, a year port, Ghana, yenya revenue every. Now, and someone koso ewa Temaport, eko we say, evidence would suggest, say, over a 5-year period, 60% of certain particulars, certain group of persons are ekra frozen foods. Eba Ghana has say, you know, the piano and no mano, ya de call them near the call auction. Now, one can say, now ya auction ama womo, just about 10% of the total cost, ya de and no mano eba. Now, custom officers are benefiting. Now, no government officials, especially 2 persons, are one more a Ben Jubilee House. Back on Akodi ministers say now Oma benefiting. A further 20% aka now almost misdescription of goods. Chese Adiano or the CHD grade 1 nebaya or some the grade 5 nebaya or the free North America nebaya or some the free Togo nebaya. Nanunti yetimi ashe na customs for na ADOMO na Oma benefiting. Then a patriotic gallant nationalist 20% for no woman na 8-year proper duty and na ama revenue shortage at Miaba. Such a spectacle. What do you think we should be doing about it?
ADAKABRI, the central problem of Ghana is corruption and lack of accountability. Again, it goes back to Gaston, Cement, Maybury, and Johnson, Oba, BC, public procurement scandals that we have seen. The people who are supposed to be the watchmen are the thieves. Now, it doesn't matter the ideas that we bring. They talk about port. We have made things electronic. The main was a new fancy terms. Now, for catching about technology. Tell me, even though I'm a doctor, I did an MBA. In my MBA class, they said that if you have a corrupt or inefficient system and you computerize it or you technologize it, to borrow a term, all what you get is a computerized or technologized corrupt system. Until we can have accountability, all the talk, whenever you talk about it, I'm sure that the in the next few days, somebody in government will announce another bureaucracy or superstructure to fix it. The problem is that we are corrupt. We need to check corruption in the public space when it comes to the notice of the government must be dealt with. The police and national security people must deal with it. And like the whole superstructure of our country corrupt. The judiciary, accountant general, courts authority, the presidency. It's all corrupt. That is the essence of what is ailing our country. If you think about it, if you are somebody who pays taxes, because I remember that about 2010, oh baby, I brought quite a few things to Ghana. The price was quite expensive. I paid my import, they took the things. And when it gets to the point there, when you are that people who don't have to do that. And as a result of that, the nation looks to revenue that can be used for all of us. It is no good. There ought to be transparency so that you both there. If these are the rules that everybody lives by, those rules. You take your exemption. Exemption, the people who are exemptions, not those the people who are doing the legitimate business and paying.
Doc, we say ya na one man so one so kakrana yet me at you one patch doc.
You imagine. Basically, my basic point is that there needs to be accountability, and those we have entrusted with running our affairs needs to set the example. It's answerful. Also, audition and see, as long as the big men don't live by the rules and they are giving exemptions to their friends, we are going to keep reading about stories like this. It is not just about this story you just told me. It is about systemic corruption. Actually,
and it's yet na systems bang and na corrupt to the extent to say over a period of say 60 months. Na etimi abase particular group of persons up to 60% of pot users ekra frozen food eba Ghana the bia omonoma ko auction the bia omonoma ko auction the bia omonoma ko auction. And there appears to be no system to check them and put them in place, no matter the right duties. Adeng.
ADAKABRI, there's a system to check them. The system has been disabled by those who are supposed to run it. I read a book in which an anti-corruption expert was talking about Afghanistan. And he said that and this is an American, after he's lived in Afghanistan for about 3 years, he realized that there is a very, very divergence of views of the Karzai brothers between the Americans and local Afghans. Hamid Karzai had, in effect, mastered the art of muffin platitudes. He knew the talking point. The Americans loved him. He is this apostle of democracy. He will modernize Afghanistan. Every Afghan knew he was a crook. That his brother would take all the bribes while he talks nice about corruption and accountability and all those things. And at the end, he said, the problem is not that Afghanistan is not functioning. The problem is that it is functioning for the express purpose of siphoning public resources into the private pockets of the Karzai family and their friends. Take out the Karzai family and their friends and put in some local names, and you get what I'm talking about.
As a local name, no, and in due course, Yabeka local name, no, say yepe revenue, a day I saw I shore up a norma. Na just last Monday, na a 40-feet frozen food container with your duty of 140,000 cedis. No, ya change ama ako upward to 200,000 cedis. The 200,000 cedis no na kopa say wonu obetua de obema de na ko auction na wakọ na wakwa je ade no at say 20,000-30,000 na yakot no akwakoton no mo disika. I'm saying how can we continue to do this and expect say state ni benya revenue?
We shouldn't continue to do that, like and the thing is that Ghanaians are not angry enough. Because this thing that you just described, it is a scheme. It is a very well-organized scheme to loot public resources, to deprive the state of resources that can be used for development. And actually, now that you're talking about that, remember the Public Accounts Committee talking about Auditor General irregularities, which is a nice term for money that has been found missing. Under Nadal's government alone, transfer is between 5 and 7 billion US dollars. And it is about 3 billion a year from IMF. If all those things were not happening, maybe we wouldn't need the IMF.
Oh, Raddy. Yanka Yasem for friend. Now to the state of Ghana. And we have the opportunity. It meets here a former president of the Republic, John Dramani Mahama, Anna.
I listened to all the speech this morning.
And were you able to glean any solutions for our current predicament? Ewo, Nekasa no Kasa Enwana.
There were solutions, but ADAKABRI, they were depressingly familiar. A lot of the things he said made sense. That our problem is debt and deficit. That is true. There has also been economic mismanagement, of course, feeding into the debt and deficit. And he talked about some of the things that we could do. He talked about the suggestions he has made last May about what he thought the president would do about the economy. He talked about Keno Furiata, and of course, Keno Furiata has become a very convenient public scapegoat. He was not even the head of the economic management team. He was the face of it, but he wasn't the head of it. And not only that, it's not as if the president abdicated running the country, the economic management team. They were his economic management team. Nobody elected the economic management team. They elected a president. And see, in a certain sense, the failure of the economic management team is also the failure of the president. I get it that, as Lincoln said, public sentiment is everything. And see, the president needs to change people in the economic management team, reassign people, take people out, because as George W. would also say, people are policy. And if somebody says, I don't think we should go back to the IMF, and we decide we are going back to the IMF, then maybe that person ought not to be leading us going back to the IMF. The president says, oh, budget. The person who is going to implement the budget must do the budget. You can't deliver a budget. Everybody knows you are living on the day after you deliver the budget. Now, what kind of country is that? So the person who is going to run the budget must deliver it. You go back to President Mahama. He made good points, but most of them were depressingly familiar. You wonder whether he could have done some of those things when he was there. But the thing that struck me was how confidently he addressed corruption. In 2017, the word corruption would never have crossed his lips, but given how confidently he addressed it, you can see how much Ghana's landscape has changed under the last 6 years because of what President Akufo-Addo has done or failed.
Somewhere during the tenure of John Dramani Mahama, he did not let out the word corruption or corruption-related offenses come out of his mouth. Don't me mean anokura enka. Nensuso enura na or kasano. Confidently, he's talking about corruption and how it has become endemic and how we should deal with it. And it's all because of the performance of the current government. Is that what you are suggesting?
I'm not suggesting, I'm stating it. Because in 2016, the reason John Mahama lost, the largest reason, was the perception that the government was irredeemably corrupt. People thought that they had not seen such corruption before. And now, compared to what we are seeing now, people think what we saw during his term wasn't that terrible. And that has given him the confidence to address
it. And how are the citizens, how is our society supposed to take the confident Mahama addressing issues on corruption? How are we supposed to take it?
Well, it just goes to the failure by the current incumbent. And by the way, I also listened to Kwame Pianin's interview, which was excellent, about the state of the economy and where we are now. I think that you can remember that as far back as a year ago, when we did interviews and we talked, I suggested some of these things about reshuffles and the need for the government to change direction and all those things. We didn't do that. And as far recently as maybe a week or two ago, the president was in Kumasi talking as if he lived on a different planet.
We will get there. We will get there. We will get there. Still, the basis are corruption. I am so pervasive. I am so endemic. Our society, at a point, we thought, say, John Dramani Mahama, a corruption crowd, a gareno, ama ayene se krono. Nanso so the great expectation. Emma, the current president, Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Now it's in smittens. There's a ninyano. I evaporate. Ababe Dwane ama yahunu say dukadaya. Wamumi enu nyina. Yet when John Dramani Mahama said and supported the view of Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, said no matter what, the Ghana Armed Forces should be professional and stay in the barracks. Was it about the politicians agreeing, said they are all in the same soup, and for that matter, the soldiers should not really go do anything to undermine the constitution of Ghana? What do you make of that?
Well, I don't think that they are necessarily all in the same soup. Indeed, all of us Ghanaians are in the same soup. And I think that was one of the most important points President Mahama made, that regardless of what our problems are now, it will be best for us to solve it through constitutional means. That I agree with, that the NPP group in Parliament insisting that Nana remove Kanufuriata, Parliament refusing to deal with the government business. I have always felt, and between the two of us at ADAKABRI, the Speaker will bear me witness. I have always felt that Parliament has not done enough in terms of executive oversight. As Nana said it, I don't see how Ken would have been confirmed for his second term. But to return to President Mahama's point, I think that what we are witnessing is very similar to the terminal days of President Liman. So it was very helpful for President Mahama to give the hope that we can work through these problems through constitutional means. And I hope that the President, in his address in the next few days, would show us the path forward and also emphasize the point President Mahama about the need to stick to constitutional means of the
Yane Dr. Arthur Kobina Kennedy, a Ghanaian medical officer based in the US, and AD and Komo CC. Doc, ahead of John Dramani Mahama Bekasano, Dr. Kesel Atuforsen, painted such a gloomy picture of what was happening in Ghana and what appeared to be the scenario the current government, the president, the economic management team, the finance minister, all multimedia see Ghana for. And at the time of Wakasano, Makuma ebo pum 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 say so jabi et me appreciate san semonoa case atofo na all can no a adie ne betimi asi ewo man mu ase if indeed say ye no kore and a current government eso de asie yan
It's not good, but accountability is a very important part of governance. And as my support, due to freedom of speech and the environment of democratic governance, the government can come out and dispute some of it, and I think they will. But having said that, it also underlines the fact that Parliament has dropped the ball, that the kind of vigorous executive oversight that should have happened in the interchange between the executive and Parliament, particularly when Parliament is almost evenly divided, when there will be a vigorous nationalistic questioning of the things government is doing, and even information that government itself may not be willing to share with the public, but are obligated to share with Parliament. I think that it is not just that maybe when a soldier or somebody hears that he will be disturbed, all Ghanaians will be disturbed, then Parliament would be up and doing and looking itself in the mirror and saying, why didn't we get to all this?
Na ohwe se Kwame Pinim asɛm a ɔka ye one of the 4 points or raise here say we need credible messenger. Now we need credible messenger to the International Monetary Fund, sir. Let me say, how would you, for whatever reason, say ube negotiate a kind of a truce with the 95 member MPs, parliamentary MPP, you know, when a genuine truce, and I say akoye nentwibini ese eni na wo eso ase ne pacha.